Welcome to this journey through one of the most tragic accounts registered in the history of Charleston, South Carolina. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments from where you are watching us and the exact time you are listening to this narration. In June 2022, a mathematics historian named Dr. Elena Rodriguez was researching early American contributions to number theory when she discovered something extraordinary in the archives of the College of Charleston. Hidden inside a box of miscellaneous papers from the 1840s was a series of mathematical manuscripts, complex proofs, number sequences, geometric theorems, and astronomical calculations. The work was sophisticated, demonstrating understanding of advanced mathematics that would have been remarkable for any scholar of the period. But what made the manuscripts extraordinary was the notation on the first page, written in elegant script. Mathematical Investigations by Maria Collins, Negro woman belonging to Professor Edmund Hartwell, Charleston, South Carolina, commenced March 1839. These calculations are my mind's freedom when my body has none. The manuscripts contained over 200 pages of original mathematical work, including several theorems that would not be formally proven by recognized mathematicians until decades later. The final page, dated November 1842, contained only a brief note. "They will sell me away from the numbers. I die knowing I understood patterns in creation that free men cannot see. My genius dies with me, unacknowledged and lost." This discovery launched an intensive investigation into the life of Maria Collins, an enslaved woman who was apparently one of the most brilliant mathematical minds in antebellum America, whose work anticipated discoveries that would later make other mathematicians famous, and whose story was so thoroughly erased that she remained unknown for 180 years. What doctor? Rodriguez uncovered challenges everything we think we know about genius, education, and the systematic destruction of human potential under slavery. Maria Collins first appears in Charleston city records in 1820, when she was listed in a property inventory as Negro Girl Maria, age approximately 8, house servant, purchased from estate of Thomas Morrison, value $350. The inventory provides no information about her parents or early childhood beyond noting she'd been born somewhere in South Carolina around 1812. She was purchased by Edmund Hartwell, a professor of mathematics and natural philosophy at the College of Charleston, who apparently needed a house servant. Professor Hartwell was a respected academic who had been educated at Harvard College and who taught mathematics, astronomy, and natural philosophy. According to college records and contemporary accounts, he was considered one of Charleston's leading intellectuals, a man dedicated to scientific inquiry and rational thought. He published papers on astronomical observations, mathematical theory, and educational methods. He was also a slave owner who apparently saw no contradiction between his dedication to reason and his ownership of human beings as property. The circumstances of Maria's early life are documented only fragmentally through household records and later testimony. According to an account given in 1867 by a woman named Sarah, who had been enslaved in the same household, Maria worked primarily in Hartwell's study and library, cleaning, organizing papers, and maintaining the professor's extensive collection of books and scientific instruments. Miss Maria was in that study every day, Sarah testified. She dusted the books, cleaned the instruments, organized the professor's papers. She was surrounded by all that learning, but wasn't supposed to understand any of it. But Miss Maria, she was different from the start. She would look at the professor's papers when she was cleaning. She would study the mathematical symbols and diagrams. She taught herself what they meant just by observing and thinking. Nobody taught her. She taught herself mathematics by watching and thinking and having a mind that could grasp things most people can't grasp. The first documented evidence of Maria's mathematical abilities comes from a letter Professor Hartwell wrote to a colleague at Harvard in 1835. The letter discusses a mathematical problem Hartwell had been working on involving number theory. Hartwell wrote, "I have experienced something quite extraordinary. The Negro girl, Maria, who maintains my study, appears to have developed an unusual facility with numbers. I discovered her examining my mathematical papers one afternoon. Rather than punish her for this presumption, I decided to test her understanding. I presented her with a simple arithmetic problem. She solved it instantly in her head. I presented increasingly difficult problems. She solved each one with remarkable speed and accuracy. Most remarkably, when I showed her a geometric proof I had been working on, she pointed out an error in my reasoning and suggested a more elegant approach. I was so startled I could barely respond. I'm uncertain what to make of this situation. A Negro woman demonstrating mathematical ability superior to many of my students challenges fundamental assumptions about intellectual capacity and race." This letter reveals Hartwell's recognition of Maria's abilities and his discomfort with what that recognition implied. Like many educated white Americans of his era, Hartwell believed in racial hierarchies that placed white people at the top intellectually. Maria's obvious mathematical genius contradicted these beliefs, creating cognitive dissonance Hartwell struggled to resolve. Over the following months, according to Hartwell's correspondence and journal entries, he began what he called an experiment. He started giving Maria mathematical problems to solve, testing her abilities systematically. He provided her with increasingly complex mathematical texts, observing how quickly she mastered their content. He introduced her to geometric proofs, algebraic equations, astronomical calculations, and number theory. Maria apparently excelled at all of it. In a journal entry from August 1835, Hartwell wrote, "Maria's mathematical ability is extraordinary by any measure. She grasps abstract concepts with minimal explanation. She sees patterns in numbers that I miss. She solves problems using methods I have not taught her, suggesting she is developing her own mathematical intuitions. In 6 months, she has advanced from basic arithmetic to understanding mathematical principles taught at university level. I am observing something that should not be possible according to prevailing theories about Negro intellectual capacity, yet I cannot deny what I observe." By 1836, Maria had apparently advanced to the point where she was effectively collaborating with Hartwell on his research. According to his papers, she was helping him with astronomical calculations, assisting with mathematical proofs, and even suggesting new approaches to problems he was investigating. But this collaboration was never acknowledged publicly. Maria remained a house servant who officially did cleaning and household work. Her mathematical contributions were invisible. The manuscripts discovered by Dr. Rodriguez begin in March 1839, when Maria was approximately 27 years old. The early entries show sophisticated mathematical work, original proofs, explorations of number sequences, investigations of geometric principles. Maria was not simply learning mathematics, she was doing original mathematical research, developing new insights, and proving new theorems. One early manuscript contains Maria's investigation of what mathematicians now call primitive Pythagorean triples, sets of 3 integers that satisfy the Pythagorean theorem. Maria developed a systematic method for generating all such triples and proved several theorems about their properties. This work anticipated discoveries that would later be credited to European mathematicians. Maria's approach was elegant and original, showing deep understanding of number theory. Another manuscript investigates properties of prime numbers. Maria documented patterns she had observed in how prime numbers distribute among integers, including observations about prime gaps and prime clusters. Some of her conjectures about prime distribution would not be formally proven until the 20th century. She was essentially doing cutting-edge number theory research in complete isolation with no formal training, while enslaved in Charleston, South Carolina. Dr. Rodriguez worked with mathematics historians to analyze Maria's manuscripts. Their conclusion was unanimous. Maria's work was genuinely original and mathematically sophisticated. She was proving theorems, developing new methods, and making observations that demonstrated profound mathematical insight. If she had been a free white man, her work would likely have brought her recognition as one of the leading mathematicians of her era. Maria Collins possessed rare mathematical ability, Dr. Rodriguez wrote in her analysis. Her intuition for number patterns, her facility with abstract reasoning, her ability to develop rigorous proofs, all demonstrate a first-rate mathematical mind. She was working at the frontier of mathematical knowledge in her time, but she was enslaved, female, and black. These facts made her genius invisible to the mathematical community and to history until now. Maria's manuscripts also contain personal reflections on her situation. In an entry from July 1839, she wrote, "I work with numbers because in mathematics there is truth independent of human prejudice. A theorem is either proven or it is not. A calculation is either correct or incorrect. Numbers do not care about my race or my legal status. In mathematics, I am equal to any mind that has ever worked with these principles. Professor Hartwell knows this. He sees that I understand mathematics as well as or better than he does. Yet he continues to own me, continues to deny me credit for my work, continues to treat me as property, even while benefiting from my mathematical contributions. I do not understand how a rational mind can hold such contradictions. But then, perhaps no mind is truly rational. Perhaps we are all creatures of the societies we inhabit, unable to see beyond what those societies teach us to see." This passage reveals Maria's clear understanding of both mathematics and her own situation. She recognized that mathematical truth was universal and that her ability to grasp that truth demonstrated her intellectual equality with any mathematician. She also recognized the profound injustice of being enslaved while possessing abilities that should have brought her recognition and freedom. Her observation about Hartwell's contradictions is particularly sharp. She identified the cognitive dissonance that allowed him to acknowledge her genius while maintaining her enslavement. By 1840, Maria's mathematical work had advanced to the point where she was investigating problems beyond Hartwell's expertise. According to letters he wrote to other mathematicians, Hartwell was beginning to feel intellectually inadequate compared to Maria. He consulted her about his own research. He asked her to check his calculations and proofs. He relied on her mathematical judgment in ways that inverted their legal relationship, even while that legal relationship remained unchanged. In a letter to a Harvard colleague in March 1840, Hartwell wrote, "I find myself in an extraordinary situation. Maria's mathematical abilities now exceed my own in certain areas, particularly number theory and abstract reasoning. I consult her about problems I cannot solve. She consistently demonstrates insights that escape me. Yet she remains legally my property. I own her body and labor while depending on her mind. The contradiction becomes daily more uncomfortable. My colleagues would mock me if they knew I relied on a Negro woman for mathematical guidance. Yet I cannot deny her obvious superiority in certain domains. I do not know how to resolve this situation." The letter reveals Hartwell's discomfort, but also his unwillingness to take the logical step of freeing Maria. He was troubled by the contradiction, but not troubled enough to challenge it fundamentally. His concern about being mocked by colleagues if they knew the truth shows how social pressures reinforce slavery, even when individual enslavers recognized enslaved people's abilities. Through 1840 and 1841, Maria continued producing original mathematical work. Her manuscripts from this period include investigations of geometric series, explorations of algebraic equations, and astronomical calculations related to planetary orbits. She was essentially conducting independent mathematical research while nominally working as a house servant, stealing time late at night to pursue the mathematics that gave her intellectual freedom even while she remained physically enslaved. But Maria's situation was becoming increasingly precarious. According to testimony from Sarah and others who knew the household, Hartwell's wife, Catherine, was growing resentful of the time and attention her husband devoted to Maria. Catherine apparently understood that Maria's abilities threatened the racial and intellectual hierarchies Catherine depended on to justify her own social position. If an enslaved black woman could be more intelligent than a Harvard-educated white professor, what did that mean about the natural order Catherine believed in? In December 1841, according to a letter Hartwell wrote to his brother, Catherine demanded that Maria be sold. "My wife insists that I dispose of Maria," Hartwell wrote. "Catherine claims Maria has become too presumptuous, too familiar, that she forgets her place. The truth, which I cannot admit to Catherine, is that Catherine resents Maria's obvious intellectual abilities. Catherine has discovered that I consult Maria about my mathematical work. This discovery has enraged her. She will not tolerate having an enslaved woman in the household who demonstrates abilities that challenge Catherine's understanding of racial hierarchy. I am caught between my recognition of Maria's genius and my wife's demands. I fear I must yield to Catherine's wishes, despite knowing this will waste extraordinary mathematical potential." Hartwell's letter reveals the complex dynamics at play. Catherine's resentment was not simply about Maria's presence, but about what Maria represented, a challenge to fundamental assumptions about race and intelligence. Hartwell understood this, but lacked the courage to defend Maria against his wife's demands, or to take the more radical step of freeing Maria. In early 1842, Hartwell began making arrangements to sell Maria. According to his correspondence, he initially tried to find a buyer who would appreciate Maria's abilities and allow her to continue mathematical work. He wrote to several academic colleagues, inquiring whether they knew anyone who might purchase an enslaved woman with unusual intellectual abilities. Most recipients of these letters apparently thought Hartwell was joking or had lost his senses. The concept of an enslaved woman doing serious mathematical work was so far outside their understanding that they could not take it seriously. Maria's manuscripts from this period show her awareness of what was coming. In an entry from September 1842, she wrote, "Professor Hartwell has informed me that I am to be sold. He claims this is necessary due to household circumstances he does not fully explain, though I understand the cause well enough. His wife cannot bear having me in the house, cannot bear knowing that her husband consults me about his work, cannot bear the challenge I represent to her understanding of the world. So I will be sold away, likely to someone who has no interest in mathematics, no understanding of what I can do, no recognition of my abilities. My work will end. These papers I have written will be hidden or destroyed. My theorems will be lost. Knowledge I have discovered will have to be rediscovered by others decades or centuries from now. This is what slavery does. It does not merely steal labor, it destroys minds, it wastes genius, it prevents discoveries that could advance human knowledge. I am being sold, not because I am worthless, but because I am too valuable, because my value challenges assumptions that my society depends on. The irony is crushing. Maria was sold in November 1842 to a rice planter named Thomas Whitmore, who owned a plantation approximately 40 miles north of Charleston. Whitmore had no interest in mathematics or in Maria's intellectual abilities. He purchased her to work in his household, to cook and clean and serve. The sale price was $850, a typical price for a house servant in her 30s, with no premium for the mathematical genius that made her extraordinary. According to plantation records, Maria worked at Whitmore's plantation until her death in 1847. The cause of death was listed as consumption, likely tuberculosis. She was approximately 35 years old. In 5 years at Whitmore's plantation, she apparently had no opportunity to pursue mathematics, no access to books or papers, no intellectual stimulation of any kind. Her final years were spent doing domestic labor, her mathematical abilities completely wasted, her potential completely unfulfilled. Maria left no known children. There is no evidence she ever married or had family. She died alone in a system that had denied her everything except the ability to think, and in the end, it denied her even the opportunity to use that ability productively. Professor Edmund Hartwell continued teaching at the College of Charleston until his death in 1856. His obituary praised his contributions to mathematics and education. It made no mention of Maria. Hartwell apparently never publicly acknowledged her abilities or her contributions to his work. Whether he kept Maria's manuscripts out of guilt, respect, or simple habit of collecting papers, we don't know. But he did keep them, and they survived in his papers for 180 years until their discovery in 2022. Dr. Rodriguez's analysis of Maria's manuscripts revealed their significance. She found that Maria had proven several theorems about number theory that would not be formally proven by recognized mathematicians until much later. A theorem about Pythagorean triples that Maria proved in 1839 was essentially the same as one proven by a German mathematician in 1863. Observations about prime number distribution that Maria made in 1841 anticipated work done in the early 20th century. Methods for astronomical calculation that Maria developed were independently rediscovered by later mathematicians. If Maria had been a free white man, if her work had been published, she might be remembered today alongside the great mathematicians of the 19th century, Dr. Rodriguez stated in a 2023 lecture. Her work was original, rigorous, and anticipated later discoveries, but she was enslaved, female, and black. These facts made her invisible to the mathematical community. Her work was hidden, her name was forgotten, her genius was completely wasted. When we think about what slavery destroyed, we must think not just about physical suffering, but about intellectual potential. How many Maria Collinses existed whose work was never documented? How many mathematical discoveries, scientific breakthroughs, artistic achievements were lost because the people who could have made them were enslaved? The loss is incalculable. The discovery of Maria's manuscripts generated significant interest in the mathematical community. The American Mathematical Society invited Dr. Rodriguez to present her findings at their annual meeting in 2023. The presentation was titled Maria Collins and Lost Mathematical Knowledge Under Slavery. Dr. Rodriguez argued that Maria's case, while extraordinary in being documented, was likely not unique, that there were probably many enslaved people with exceptional intellectual abilities whose contributions were lost. Following the presentation, the American Mathematical Society created an award in Maria Collins's name, the Maria Collins Prize for Excellence in Mathematics, given to scholars whose work advances understanding of historically marginalized communities' contributions to mathematics. The first award was given in 2024. The prize citation reads, "In honor of Maria Collins, c. 1812-1847, whose mathematical genius flowered despite enslavement, and whose work anticipated discoveries later credited to others. May her memory inspire us to seek out and acknowledge mathematical contributions from all people, regardless of race, gender, or social circumstances." There have also been efforts to memorialize Maria in Charleston. In 2023, the College of Charleston Mathematics Department established the Maria Collins Memorial Scholarship for students from underrepresented backgrounds studying mathematics. The Scholarship Fund description states, Maria Collins was enslaved by a College of Charleston mathematics professor in the 1830s and 1840s. Despite having no formal education, she developed into one of the most brilliant mathematical minds of her era. Her work was hidden, her contributions were denied, and her potential was destroyed by slavery. This scholarship honors her memory and her genius by supporting students who face barriers to mathematical education. A historical marker was placed at the location where Hartwell's house once stood, now occupied by a modern building. The marker reads, "On this site lived Maria Collins, c. 1812-1847, an enslaved woman who possessed extraordinary mathematical genius. Despite being denied education and opportunity, Maria conducted original mathematical research between 1835 and 1842, proving theorems and making discoveries that anticipated work by later mathematicians. Her owner, Professor Edmund Hartwell of the College of Charleston, recognized her abilities, but never freed her or publicly acknowledged her contributions. Maria was sold in 1842 and died 5 years later, her potential completely unfulfilled. Her story illustrates the incalculable waste of human genius under slavery and challenges us to recognize intellectual contributions from all people regardless of their circumstances. The marker has been controversial. Some descendants of the Hartwell family objected to language suggesting Edmund Hartwell failed Maria, arguing that he was a product of his time who treated her better than most enslavers would have. Others argued the marker doesn't go far enough in condemning Hartwell for maintaining Maria's enslavement while exploiting her genius. The Historical Society maintained the language as written, arguing it accurately represents the complexity of the situation. Dr. Rodriguez has continued researching Maria's life, hoping to find additional documentation. She has searched for plantation records from Thomas Whitmore's estate, for any letters Maria might have written, for testimony from people who knew her. So far, she has found little additional information. Maria's final 5 years remain largely undocumented, her thoughts and experiences during that period lost to history. What we do know about Maria Collins comes primarily from her own manuscripts and from Professor Hartwell's papers. These sources reveal a woman of extraordinary intellectual ability, who pursued mathematics for its own sake, who found in mathematical truth a form of freedom even while her body remained enslaved, who understood clearly the injustice of her situation, and who died knowing her genius would be lost. Maria's story forces us to confront several painful truths about slavery and about genius. First, that extraordinary ability exists independent of education and opportunity, that genius can emerge anywhere, but requires support and recognition to flourish. Maria taught herself advanced mathematics through observation and reasoning, proving that genius is innate rather than created by formal education. But without opportunity to develop and share her work, her genius was largely wasted. Second, that slavery did not merely steal labor, but destroyed minds and prevented discoveries. Maria's mathematical work was lost. Theorems she proved had to be rediscovered decades later by others. Whatever additional contributions she might have made in her 20s, 30s, and beyond were prevented by her enslavement and early death. The loss to mathematical knowledge was real and significant. Third, that even highly educated, supposedly rational people could recognize genius in enslaved people while maintaining their enslavement. Hartwell acknowledged Maria's superior mathematical abilities while continuing to own her as property. He exploited her genius while denying her freedom. His education and rationality did not prevent him from participating fully in slavery's evil. Fourth, that slavery created impossible situations where enslaved people's abilities became threats rather than assets. Maria's genius threatened Catherine Hartwell's worldview and thus led to Maria being sold away from the one environment where she could pursue mathematics. Her ability was punished rather than rewarded because it challenged assumptions the society depended on. The story also raises questions about how many other Maria Collinses existed. How many enslaved people possessed extraordinary intellectual abilities that were never documented? How many potential scientists, mathematicians, artists, writers, philosophers were born into slavery and died without ever developing their gifts? The numbers are unknowable, but certainly substantial. Maria's manuscripts represent something precious and rare, direct evidence of enslaved intellectual achievement. Most such achievement was lost without trace. Maria's decision to document her work and Hartwell's decision to preserve her papers, for whatever reason, created a record that survived. This record allows us to know definitively that at least one enslaved woman in the antebellum South was doing sophisticated mathematical research. But she almost certainly was not alone. She was simply one of the few whose work survived. The tragedy of Maria Collins is not just individual, but systematic. She represents millions of people whose potential was destroyed by slavery. Every child born into slavery was denied opportunity to develop whatever gifts they might possess. Some might have had abilities as extraordinary as Maria's. Most had abilities that, while perhaps not extraordinary, still deserved opportunity for development. All were denied. The cumulative loss to human civilization is beyond calculation. Maria's story also illustrates the particular challenges faced by enslaved women. Maria faced not only racial oppression and enslavement, but also gender discrimination. As a woman, her intellectual abilities were doubly denied. First, because she was black and enslaved. Second, because she was female in an era when women of any race were assumed to be intellectually inferior to men. If Maria had been a free white man with her abilities, she would likely have become a celebrated mathematician. If she had been an enslaved man, she still would have faced enormous obstacles, but might have found marginally more opportunity. As an enslaved woman, she faced the compounded effects of racism, slavery, and sexism. The discovery of Maria's manuscripts has inspired other researchers to look for similar hidden intellectual achievements. Several projects are now underway to search plantation records, family papers, and archives for evidence of enslaved people's intellectual contributions to science, mathematics, literature, and other fields. Some discoveries have already been made. Evidence of enslaved craftsmen developing technical innovations, enslaved healers advancing medical knowledge, enslaved craftspeople creating sophisticated art. Each discovery adds to our understanding of what was lost. But even without additional discoveries, Maria Collins's documented case is sufficient to force us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about slavery and genius. She proves definitively that extraordinary intellectual ability existed among enslaved people, that formal education was not necessary for genius to emerge, and that slavery destroyed minds as well as bodies. Maria's final manuscript entry, written just before she was sold in November 1842, serves as her epitaph and her testimony. I leave these papers not knowing if anyone will ever read them. Perhaps they will be destroyed. Perhaps they will be hidden away and forgotten. Perhaps someone decades or centuries from now will find them and know that Maria Collins existed, that she understood mathematics, that she proved theorems, that she had a mind capable of grasping abstract truth. I was born in chains. I will die in chains. But my mind was free when I worked with numbers. Mathematics cannot be enslaved. Truth cannot be owned. I understood truths that will remain true long after I am dead and forgotten. That understanding gave me dignity that slavery could not take away. They owned my body. They wasted my potential. They denied me recognition. But they could not take away what I understood. They could not make my theorems less true. They could not prevent my mind from working. In that sense, I was free even in slavery. I was fully human even when treated as property. I was a genius even when unacknowledged. Let these papers testify to that truth. I existed, I thought, I discovered, I mattered. Maria Collins, November 1842. These words, hidden for 180 years, now speak across time. They testify to Maria's existence, her genius, her humanity, and her dignity. They also testify to the catastrophic waste of human potential that slavery represented. Maria should have been celebrated, educated, supported in her mathematical research, recognized as one of the leading minds of her era. Instead, she was enslaved, exploited, and ultimately discarded when her abilities became inconvenient. Maria Collins should have changed the world. She possessed the intellectual ability to make significant contributions to mathematics, to advance human knowledge, to inspire others through her discoveries. But slavery prevented all of this. She died at 35, her potential unfulfilled, her genius wasted, her name forgotten. Until now. Now we know her name. We know her story. We know what she accomplished despite impossible obstacles. We know what was lost when she was sold away and when she died young. We know that genius was destroyed, that knowledge was lost, that the world is poorer because Maria Collins was enslaved rather than free, because she was denied rather than supported, because she was forgotten rather than remembered. Her memory challenges us to think about human potential, about systemic injustice, about what we lose when we fail to recognize and support genius wherever it emerges. It challenges us to ensure that no one today faces the barriers Maria faced, that talent is recognized and nurtured regardless of race, gender, or social circumstances. It challenges us to remember that every person denied opportunity represents not just individual tragedy, but collective loss. If this story has moved you to think about lost potential, about systematic injustice, and about the importance of recognizing and supporting genius in all people, I encourage you to reflect deeply on these themes and to work toward a world where no Maria Collins is ever forgotten again. Please share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to this channel for more stories from history that deserve to be remembered and honored.